For hundreds of years, Cleopatra's burial site remained one of history's biggest unsolved mysteries, a legendary tomb that appeared to have disappeared without a trace. Countless expeditions, rulers, and archaeologists tried to locate it, yet every attempt ended in disappointment. Then, deep beneath the desert sands west of Alexandria, researchers uncovered a sealed underground chamber unlike anything ever seen before. Locked away for over 2 millennia, its contents had remained untouched by time, and when the entrance was finally breached, the revelation inside made it clear why this tomb was never supposed to be discovered.
The queen who refused to die. For more than 2,000 years, Cleopatra VII has remained one of history's most studied rulers. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, a strategist who faced Rome, ruled with intelligence, and built an image powerful enough to survive centuries of retelling. Yet, one part of her story has remained unresolved. Roman accounts describe her burial as befitting a queen, but none reveal where it took place. For archaeologists, that absence became more than a mystery. It became an obsession that spanned generations. Ancient Egyptian priests left behind cryptic descriptions of her final rites. They wrote that she was a bride returning to Osiris, and that her union was unseen by men. Historians have debated these phrases for centuries. Some think the priests were describing a secret ritual performed deep within a sanctuary. Others believe the words were deliberate instructions meant to hide her body forever. Each new expedition claimed to be close to the truth, but every lead collapsed into speculation. In 1972, a Soviet seismic team conducted ground tests near Lake Marriott, a shallow saltwater basin southwest of Alexandria, Egypt, while searching for oil. Their sensors picked up rhythmic vibrations beneath the limestone. The signal was faint but steady, too consistent for natural earthquakes and too weak to come from machinery. Local residents began calling the area Ab al-Nafs, which means the place that breathes. The team filed the results, but the readings were never analyzed further. When the project ended, the data was archived and forgotten. The anomaly was ignored for simple reasons. Funding ended, political tension rose, research priorities shifted. The Cold War left little interest in a strange rhythm buried under Egyptian sand. For 3 decades, the data remained untouched, waiting for someone to rediscover it. That rediscovery happened in the early 2000s when new satellite scans focused on the same ridge. The images revealed geometric shapes hidden beneath the surface, clean, symmetrical, and too precise to be natural. Thermal and radar imaging showed the shapes extended several meters deep. According to analysts, they looked like parts of an artificial structure, possibly a buried complex. Some experts dismissed the images as interference, but others believed they had found a pattern worth investigating. When researchers traced the formations on a digital grid, the entire outline resembled the ancient Egyptian Ankh, the symbol of life. It was not a visible carving, but a shape revealed only through the satellite data. Reports suggested that the pattern extended toward a plateau once associated with the goddess Isis. Cleopatra had often called herself the living Isis, and that connection reignited the debate. By then, the theory had shifted. The hunt for Cleopatra was no longer about chasing a legend. It had become a scientific investigation. The satellite data hinted at heat signatures beneath the sand, and localized soil readings confirmed traces of ancient plaster and resin, substances rarely found in untouched desert terrain. What began as a myth about Egypt's last queen was turning into a mission. Within months, Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities approved a ground expedition to examine the site in person. None of them knew that when they arrived, the desert would start to move.
The desert that moved. Weeks after the ministry approved the ground mission, a joint team of expert scientists, archaeologists, and engineers arrived at the coordinates west of Lake Marriott. Within hours of setting up the monitoring equipment, something happened that no one could explain. The sensors began to register a slow, steady vibration deep underground. The readings repeated every 42 seconds, perfectly timed. At first, the researchers thought it was an error. They replaced the equipment, recalibrated the sensors, and even checked for nearby construction. The pattern remained. Every 42 seconds, the same pulse returned. It was not a glitch. It was coming from the Earth itself. When the data was reviewed, someone pointed out a disturbing detail. In Egyptian belief, the number 42 held sacred meaning. It symbolized the 42 judges who decided the fate of souls in the afterlife. The connection was enough to make some of the team uneasy. A few joked about coincidence, but others began to wonder what kind of natural force could beat with such precision. To understand the phenomenon, the team began scanning the ridge at night using thermal imaging. The results were unexpected. Beneath the dunes, streaks of residual heat formed curved shapes, bending and reconnecting like corridors. Drone surveys the next morning showed faint ridges tracing those same lines. When plotted together, the formations created a vast rectangular layout. The proportions were almost identical to temple designs from Cleopatra's time. Core samples were taken to verify the readings. The upper layers of sand appeared normal, but the deeper sections contained fragments of plaster and traces of bitumen. These were not natural materials. They were sealing agents used in ancient Egypt to protect royal or sacred chambers. The discovery sparked immediate debate. Some believed the team had finally uncovered a buried complex. Others argued the results could have been caused by soil contamination or random geological patterns, a coincidence rather than proof of human construction. Local villagers warned the team that disturbing the earth would wake what sleeps below. Most of the scientists dismissed the warnings, but that confidence vanished after what happened next. One night, security cameras captured the sand itself moving. The footage showed faint ripples spreading across the surface in the same rhythm as the underground pulse. It was not wind, and it was not an illusion. The pattern was exact. Workers who saw the recording refused to sleep near the ridge. Over the next few days, the tremors grew stronger. The project stalled as fear spread through the camp. The Ministry of Antiquities intervened, ordering a controlled excavation under the supervision of Dr. Kathleen Martinez, a respected archaeologist known for her studies of Cleopatra's burial sites. When she arrived, she reviewed the recordings in silence. Her only comment was brief. "If this is what I think it is, we are standing above something she wanted us to find." The excavation began at dawn. By the third day, the desert began to crack and shift. Beneath the collapsing sand, stone appeared, smooth, carved, and ancient. It was the first visible proof that something built by human hands had survived beneath that ground, untouched for more than 2,000 years.
The temple that spoke in 2 languages. At first, it looked like another ruined foundation from Egypt's later dynasties. But once the dust settled, the markings on the stone walls told a different story. The inscriptions identified the site as Taposiris Magna, the great tomb of Osiris. For the team, that name changed everything. In ancient belief, Osiris was the god of resurrection, the ruler of the underworld who granted life after death. If this was truly his tomb, then it was sacred ground, possibly even royal. Some historians had long suspected that Cleopatra had chosen this very region as her final resting place. She often described herself as the living form of Isis, wife of Osiris. To be buried beside him in a temple built for his eternal rebirth would have been a perfect way to link her own death with divine immortality. The temple stood about 45 kilometers from the coast of Alexandria, in the same area where ancient writings placed Cleopatra during her final days. The site was covered in fallen columns and the remains of tall stone gateways that once marked its entrance. Even after centuries of erosion, the carvings on the inner walls were still visible. As the team examined them under the lights, they noticed something unusual. The inscriptions were written in 2 languages. Egyptian hieroglyphs appeared beside ancient Greek script carved with equal care and precision. That detail stunned the team. Egyptian temples rarely mixed languages, especially in sacred contexts. Dr. Kathleen Martinez immediately recognized what it meant. Cleopatra's rule was built between 2 worlds, the Greek-speaking rulers who governed Egypt and the Egyptian priests who guarded its faith. Seeing both languages carved side by side suggested that Cleopatra herself had authorized the design. According to Martinez, the temple mirrored the queen's identity, half Greek ruler, half Egyptian goddess. Artifacts recovered nearby only added to the speculation. Coins bearing Cleopatra's face were found beside statues of Isis, holding a falcon, the symbol of renewal. Chemical tests on the altar revealed traces of blue lotus resin and bitumen, both used in royal embalming. According to reports, the workers stood in silence, realizing they were touching relics that hadn't seen daylight in more than 2,000 years. The ground sensors picked up a faint hum coming from deep under the limestone. The frequency was too low for human hearing, but it appeared on the monitors as slow, steady waves.
each pulse repeated at 42-second intervals, the same rhythm detected weeks earlier in the desert. Engineers checked for interference, but the signal persisted. The readings were real. The temple was not silent stone anymore. It was generating a measurable vibration, as if something beneath it was signaling through the rock. Field notes from the site mentioned that several workers claimed they could feel the ground trembling softly under their boots. The vibrations grew stronger with every scan. Each new reading pointed to something deeper, something hidden beneath the foundation of Taposiris Magna. Driven by curiosity and fear in equal measure, the team decided to follow the hum into the bedrock. What they uncovered next would later be called the Impossible Tunnel.
The corridor of rebirth. The hum beneath Taposiris Magna grew stronger with every scan. The team traced it to a layer of limestone deep under the temple floor. When ground-penetrating radar was used, the image that appeared on the monitors made the room fall silent. Beneath the sanctuary was a tunnel carved through solid rock, straight, smooth, and perfectly level for over a kilometer. Even modern engineers would have struggled to achieve that kind of precision. At first, the researchers thought the readings were wrong, but when a small camera was lowered through a narrow borehole, the feed confirmed it. The lens revealed a corridor with curved ceilings and walls polished like glass. It looked man-made, yet it showed no tool marks, no signs of collapse, no cracks from time or pressure. Someone thousands of years ago had created it and then sealed it perfectly. When Martinez reviewed the images, she noticed something repeating along the walls. Carvings in both Greek and Egyptian formed the same phrase again and again, Ankh Re, which means life renewed. She suggested the tunnel represented a ritual passage, a path designed to guide the dead through resurrection. The team drilled deeper, following the signal to what appeared to be a sealed chamber. The scanners showed a circular cavity ahead, roughly 20 meters wide, with a temperature higher than the rock around it, as if the stone itself had once been burned from within. They began cutting through the final wall. The sound that followed wasn't the crack of stone, but something heavier, lower, a vibration that could be felt in the chest. When the barrier finally gave way, a blast of air escaped, sharp and cold. It carried the scent of resin and metal, like something ancient that had been trapped for centuries. The dust cleared, and the team shone their lights inside. What they saw was not a simple tomb. The walls were covered in a black, glassy layer that reflected their lights. It looked less like carved stone and more like rock that had been melted by fire. When the team lifted their lights toward the ceiling, they saw hundreds of tiny blue stones pressed into the surface. Later analysis confirmed they were made from a mineral called lapis lazuli, a rare stone once used in royal tombs. The pieces had been arranged to form patterns of stars, creating scenes that showed the goddess Isis standing over the body of Osiris. Her hands were raised as beams of light connected her to the stars above him. The ceiling was not just decoration, it was a story carved in stone, showing the moment the gods brought life back from death. But the warnings carved into the walls told another story. In both Greek and Egyptian, the same line repeated again and again. Disturb the union, and the balance shall break. Near the floor, half hidden under soot, another message appeared. Blood shall drip from the left eye down. No one wanted to read it aloud. Some thought it was an offering ritual, others thought it was a curse. Either way, the room grew quiet. Everywhere they looked, there were signs of careful sealing. Veins of mercury and lead ran through the plaster. The air smelled faintly of resin. Broken jars lined the corners, and beneath one column, a small golden scarab was found, engraved with a prayer, "Bind the soul to its body." Martinez studied it in silence before saying that this chamber was not built to display the dead, it was built to contain them. At the center stood a raised platform of fused stone. Two biers sat side by side, their surfaces glazed as if burned by intense heat. Between them rested a bronze cylinder about the length of a forearm, etched with spirals that shimmered under the light. One of the researchers swore he saw the outline of a tear carved on the metal, exactly where the wall had warned of blood falling from the left eye. As Martinez approached, the floor trembled. The pulse that had haunted their readings for weeks was now so strong that it could be felt through their boots. The air pressed against their chests, and some of the team backed away. Martinez ordered everyone to stop digging and start safety tests. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "This isn't just a tomb," she said quietly. "It's responding to us." They moved to the edge of the hall and waited, but the readings kept rising.
The pulse quickened, as though something beneath the floor had awakened, something that had been waiting for this moment.
The black sarcophagus. When the final barrier cracked open, the room fell silent. For a moment, no one moved. The air that escaped from the chamber hit them like a wave. It smelled of resin, ammonia, and something older, something that burned the throat and stung the eyes. A few workers stepped back, covering their mouths with cloth, but it was too late. The chemical readings later showed dangerously high levels of toxic gas trapped inside for nearly 2,000 years. What should have been a triumph of archaeology felt like an accident that should never have happened. At the center of the chamber stood the sarcophagus. It was unlike anything anyone had seen before. Carved from a single block of black granite, it shimmered under the floodlights with an oily reflection. The lid itself weighed several tons, and the edges were sealed with a hardened mixture of resin and lead. Every movement of the crane echoed through the hall as the team prepared to lift it. When the lid finally shifted, a rush of warm air poured out. It was several degrees hotter inside the sarcophagus than the surrounding room. Martinez immediately noticed the temperature difference and called for a scan. The heat was coming from within. Everyone expected the remains inside to be cold and brittle, but what they found instead was unsettling. Two figures lay side by side, wrapped in thick linen threaded with gold. The wrappings were fused together, and the funerary masks had melted into the fabric, their outlines barely visible. Between the two bodies was a bronze cylinder. It was positioned perfectly between their arms, like a shared possession. Every few moments, it emitted a faint vibration that could be felt through the granite itself. The rhythm matched the same 42-second pulse recorded across the entire site. As the lights adjusted, the team began their examination. The male body was partially decomposed, but the damage did not look natural. His chest cavity had been opened intentionally, ribs bent outward, the heart cavity filled with solidified resin streaked with mercury. The act was not preservation, it was ritual. According to reports, Martinez whispered only 2 words when she saw it. "It's her." Tests conducted later confirmed that both mummies belonged to individuals of high status. DNA sequencing revealed markers consistent with the Ptolemaic bloodline, supporting the claim that they were royal. By the time the team sealed the chamber for safety, the air had grown heavy and metallic. The floor beneath the sarcophagus gave off low heat, and faint tremors ran through the walls. One researcher described the feeling as standing near an active engine. Another refused to re-enter the room, saying the air felt alive. The excavation that had begun with excitement now felt like trespass. According to reports, Martinez herself stood in silence before the open sarcophagus, her face pale under the work lights. "We wanted answers," she said quietly, "but this feels like punishment." The discovery confirmed everything they had hoped for and everything they feared. The tomb of Cleopatra had finally been found, but what rested inside did not feel at peace. The sarcophagus had given answers and birthed new terror. Yet the true horror was not what lay inside it, it was what surrounded it.